Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Reinsurance Podcast. I am your host today, Jared Lee, but I'm joined by Paola Di Fonzo from Generali, the head of transformation and change. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
We're super excited. We're going to dive into tons of stuff around change within big organizations. On this podcast, we've talked a bunch before about how companies lean into change, how they're trying to evolve their business models, how they're adapting to new technologies. So we'll tuck into all of that. But first, I wanted to dive into how did you sort of find your way into the wonderful world of reinsurance, find your way to Generali, and find your way to London?
Yeah, nice to be here. Very glad to be here. So I arrived in London 1 year ago. So I'm quite new to the big city. And I was in Milano before because Generali is an Italian multinational insurance group. It's actually the biggest Italian insurance group. And I was working in Milan office before joining the branch in UK.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I happened to work in insurance, to be honest. This was kind of my fate because I started working as a consultant years ago. And I wanted to work for green energy stuff at the beginning, but my company was very focused on financial services. And I started working for an insurance company. And then Generali asked me if I wanted to join their company for a strategy role. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, why not? And then Generali has been I've been in Generali for almost 6 years now. Yeah. So it was a good choice.
Yeah.
And I started working in the reinsurance space as well in Milano already because I was working in the strategy team of the global corporate and commercial business unit of Generali, which is basically you know that, but it's basically the part of our company serving corporate business. So all the big companies, the multinational companies, and for the non-life business. So reinsurance is quite a big topic for us. It's fundamental to have a good reinsurance setup, a good reinsurance coverage, both treaty and facultative, to keep the business sustainable. Yeah. And so we started working on an overall reinsurance optimization program, which took like 2 years for the rollout, and that's where I got familiar with the topic. Yeah, and definitely. Then when I joined the UK branch as head of transformation and change and data governance, of course I kept my, let's say, eye on the insurance space, and I collaborate quite a lot with our head of insurance, Andy, which you know very well. Yeah. And we try to, since the insurance is important and also quite a difficult topic and a very technical one. It's not so easy to sell it as, let's say, a transformation or an innovation topic. So we try to find some smart solutions to improve from that side. Also from an operational perspective, not only from a technical perspective.
Yeah, that makes a bunch of sense. And I can easily see the transition from just a broader strategy role, which is sort of looking at across the organization and things you're trying to achieve, to then sort of diving deep into specifically how do we, drive transformation and business change and more importantly, using technology to sort of optimize for those various things. But you mentioned something at the very end there that I thought was interesting that I want to sort of double click on. This idea that, especially within certain sectors like reinsurance being one of them, but the difficulty in sort of selling that internally. How do you think about, of all the various projects that you want to explore, look into, for those listeners who are trying to sort of push and drive change through their organizations, what does that sort of look like and how you sort of position it or just sell it? Is it something based on the ambition of an organization, how you drive better data and decision making? Is it focused on cost? Like, how do you think about that, quote unquote, that sell internally when you look at something that excites you?
Yeah, as usual, the first driver is cost. Yeah. So if you can use better technology, better operation to reduce the cost of insurance, of course, it's going to be a key driver and everybody's going to listen to that. But it's also about, in UK, Generali is a pure corporate player. Mm-hmm. So for us, reinsurance is really important. And even if it's not easy to talk about reinsurance in a not reinsurance language, you need to find the right levers. And we started with, let's try to have a solution that can help us visualize what are the data on reinsurance, which is the most important thing, I guess, it's where you have to start, because especially in this very, evolving insurance space, and with all the companies and the market trends moving into, innovation, digital space, even if for the non-life corporate is still a little bit not so fast, like for the retail space. But we need to be ready to the change. Yeah. And especially in London, I think that here is quite fast, the evolution of the market, also compared to compared to European countries and insurance market, but also if you compare it with the US and Asia, which are a little bit more into digitalization. The market is now evolving into digital placement, digital platform, marketplace platform, and so on. And it's starting from insurance, but reinsurance is going to be the next step, because reinsurance always follow what happened in the insurance space, which is quite natural. But you need to be ready for that. So we need to start to have a good visualization of what are our data to manage your insurance.
Well, I think that's really interesting as well, because you're looking at it, with the lens on the future, saying these changes are coming and are inevitable, and what are the things that are going to be universally true in that future, right? Mm-hmm. And clarity of data, the speed in which you can understand it, the speed in which you can prepare it, those types of things. Like if we go back, there's a famous Jeff Bezos quote, but he's talking about like there's not a universe in which customers want things more expensive and slower. Yeah. Right? And I think the same thing can be applied with our perspective on the industry. Is there isn't a universe in which you'd want less clarity on your data or you should take longer to prepare it, right? So there's this pursuit of doing that work better, because as we see those transitions towards more digital trading and transition of data transfer to other partners and things, getting yourself in front of that trend, which is going to be massively beneficial. Yeah. If we quickly then look at kind of the work that your UK is doing with us, how is that sort of process done prior to doing that work on Supercede? What are the sort of things that they're seeing now as they take advantage of using our platform on that reinsurance team?
First of all, I would mention the collaboration between the technical reinsurance team and the sales people, so the underwriters, because for sure they have a technical knowledge of the data, because they are the owner of every insurance data. It's where everything starts. It's the sales process and the sales data, the client data, the portfolio data. But reinsurance use highly transformed data. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult for an underwriter to look at the final, let's say, reinsurance outcomes to be submitted to the insurance market and recognize everything very, very easily. So they need to spend a lot of time in looking at the data and understanding why we put together these claims, why we put together these premiums, and so on, without going into technical details. But thanks to the technology, we are able to have a better visualization of data, better deep dive on aggregated data, and it's been quite easy for us, at least easier, to have this collaboration between the technical team and the underwriting team. And for us, it's very important. I mean, for everyone, I guess, but it's important that the insurance data are approved by the underwriters, because at the end of the day, it's their portfolio. An head of line of business needs to know what is going to be submitted to the insurance market, and they need to understand it. And the more time you save from the salesman, the more sales time you have. So,
I think that's a really interesting part of the reinsurance role and the role it serves within an insurance company. And we've not talked about this too much on the podcast previously, but the reinsurance purchasing team itself, one, as you pointed out, is working on behalf of the other entities around the world, right? If they're purchasing reinsurance on behalf of the regional property team, like that regional property team's underwriters and similar, they're sort of giving the authority of that company to buy reinsurance on their behalf, but it's their portfolio, as you said. So they're the ones who ultimately need to at least give their blessing to what the purchasing is going to look like there. So that collaboration is super, super important. And the ability for that team to sort of align with those other business units and sort of get that collective buy-in that this is in fact in the right spot. And that small seeded re team, does that across the business, right? They do it across all the various offices and all the various teams. So it might be the underwriters, but it might also be the different claims teams and the in-house accounting teams. Or so that collaboration piece is super, super important.
Yeah. Also the claims team, exactly.
Yeah. So what are the other various teams that get involved? Is the underwriting relationship with their seeded re team, is that one of the most important ones from what you guys are seeing?
I mean, the underwriting and the claims are let's say, the data owner of the data that are going into their insurance packages at the end, the insurance data. And then, it's mainly these two teams working with their insurance people, with their insurance team.
Yeah, and then getting everyone on the same page with the data and everything looking quickly. And it's almost the speed in which you can agree that this is in fact correct versus, the number of back and forths of going, something looks a little bit off there, and you're trying to sort of dig into where that confusion has come from. Yeah,
absolutely. That's the most important thing. And also it's safe. I mean, other teams that are involved are the IT team, for sure, that needs to extract data to be then put into the insurance outcomes. The operation team, like teams like mine, because we work on optimization of processes and so on. But the one always involved are reinsurance underwriting claims.
Yeah. And do those other teams get involved with the outcome of the reinsurance? You talked a bit about sort of having a lens as to all the deals being in one place or sort of being on top of what all those deals look like. Do those local underwriting teams also have some input into that process, or is that from like Generali normally left to just the seeded re team to oversee, or is there some collaboration that happens during that part of the process?
There's also some collaboration that happens because, for example, when the insurance team has queries on some claims or some any kind of data they have in the insurance outcome, they need to ask the underwriters or the claims team where this is claim coming from. Are you sure this one is the right, let's say, allocated rightly in terms of timing? Because the insurance process is an annual process, so we have some cutoff dates where we look at our portfolio, and then after that deadline, usually you don't add stuff that are coming out after. So they need to align on this kind of stuff. But I don't know, if you have a big claim for, property, for example, which is coming 2 weeks after the deadline, but you still have the package ongoing, you need to include it. And so it's quite a collaborative space.
Well, and that partnership piece, I think, is one, when we talk about these various workflows, we sort of skip or inherently ignore. Like, one of the things we've talked about previously on like why reinsurance exists, part of it is to help to help the underwriters grow into new products or new geographies or similar. And if we have it where that partnership is aligned or thought of there, like that again reinforces that this team wants to write cyber as well. But like, they have to do that alongside their partners on the seeded re team who are helping secure the sufficient capacity to do that new, class of business or similar. So those are all types of things that, further reinforce the relationship strength there. And if you can get it where they're not seen as one party's taxing the other party with monotonous work or similar, but rather this is a partner who's sort of going out, securing ability for you to write more business, which again, that's how you guys make money by writing good insurance business around the world.
But also having the overall portfolio with the proper mix of line of business and accordingly of reinsurance, and having a diversified portfolio in terms of not only of line of business but also geographically and so on. So it's important that everyone has a clear view on its portfolio and on its claims per line of business. We are divided per line of business, like all the corporate and commercial insurer. But then you need to have a broader overview on the overall portfolio of the company, because you cannot be too exposed on one line of business or on one geography, on one risk. So that's why the reinsurance team is also super important, not only to produce and negotiate with the market, understanding the trends, but also to have a look at the overall portfolio and say, okay, we are in a good shape or not.
If we then move back to sort of the transformation and change sort of role, for a firm especially like Generali, and there's a number of these firms around the world, but sort of have a truly global brand, How do you think about programs and initiatives that you might be starting or leading here from London, but you know you have colleagues in Italy, you have colleagues across Europe and Asia and some in the US. Like, how do you think about programs? Do you like to pilot things in one location then grow? Do you like to try to go, we like this, we're going to roll it out worldwide from the start? How do you think about those types of challenges from your role?
That's a difficult one in the sense that I don't have one answer to that because it depends really on what is the type of program and also on what is happening on each specific market. So the example of the UK is very linear because the UK is going, the UK insurance market is moving the first steps into digitalization, and they have a lot of, we have a lot of innovative distribution channel like MGAs, for example. It's a market that works a lot through partnerships, and it's very different, for example, from the Italian market, where we don't have this, for example, this type of distribution channels. They are very few in Italy. So it depends from the initiative. For example, if when we ran the overall insurance optimization project, we were looking at the overall portfolio. So we were looking at it at reinsurance not only from a technical perspective, from a process perspective, and from operation perspectives, also the tools and so on. Then we are not, as Generali, we are not a super, let's say, centralized entity. The country have a lot of autonomy. They are very autonomous. So if they find a good tool or a good partner or, I don't know, whatever, a good technology to use in the country, we are free to do that, of course. But when we find some best practices, we bring it to the center and we try to scale it up to the other countries if it's possible. Yeah,
and that makes a lot of sense. And I think it seems like, at least with Generali's perspective, there's this really sort of principled thinking around what are we trying to achieve here. And a lot of that looks at, in this specific geography, we have X issue with claims or X issue with what have you. And that allows that entity themselves to sort of try to tackle that. But in cases where that challenge is inherently global, reinsurance purchasing being one of those central pieces, it begins to make sense to go, okay, should this be something we try to build out around the world or, to the other offices, because they too have similar challenges here. Yeah. I think it's one of the areas as well where when we talk about the challenges the industry faces, firms like yours and other sort of big, multinational organizations wrestle with data maybe more than most, because like the way data gets entered into systems in London versus, elsewhere in the world will inherently differ, right? Yeah. The routes in which you write business via MGAs or local agents or direct or whatever those things are means the data comes in such a variety of various formats that it's really hard to say, oh, here it all is in the system, right? And I think we'd, from the outside, think insurance companies have this really clean list of all the information, but I doubt that's the case. Is that, you're trying to sort of roll out programs to sort of build out some more structure in places?
So data now is the hot topic of the moment, especially in industry like ours, where we have plenty of data on clients, on exposure, on location, and really our business depends on this. Let's say that data quality is one of the main topic, the main point, room for improvement for the insurance companies. Sorry, not only data quality, because data quality is like the consequence of it, but the overall data literacy, so understanding your data. It's the main topic that is discussed around my colleagues at the moment. So how do we manage data? How do we use better our data? How do we improve the data quality? How can we use data to predict, for predictive model, risk modeling, and so on? Especially in the light of all these new risks uprising, like, I don't know, cyber risk, but also terrorism, but also, new risks that we never had to manage before, or also existing risks that are evolving, so with climate change and everything, so I'm not saying anything new, but the management of data is becoming more and more important, and having let's say, a standard data standard, so a common understanding of a company data, it's very important. So yes, we do manage data slightly different country by country because there are different needs of the market, But at the same time, we need to have a global level. We need to have an understanding, a common understanding of what our data are used for insurance, but not only.
Yeah.
So it's a very complex setup to put in place, and like everyone, we are working on it, and also, we need to identify the right technology to do that. Is it data lake, for example?
Yeah.
Is it, I don't know, a platform for insurance? It's still to be decided, but it's one of the biggest topics.
And you can tell you have the job that you have, and you've come from a strategy background, because at no point where you're like, we need to have more data, right? The whole conversation, or the whole answer you just gave, was around what are you going to do with the data? How are you going to use it to drive decision making? How are you going to use it to drive new products or innovate for the clients? And I think that's sometimes where our industry sort of goes the wrong direction, or sort of foul a little bit, is they pursue more data for the sake of more without clarity as to what are we trying to achieve with the data. And even as you're saying at the end there, it's like, do we need a data lake? Well, it depends. What are we trying to do? What is that might be the answer, but if you don't have clarity around what you're trying to achieve, it makes it unbelievably difficult to make decisions on what you should try to implement. But if we take a step back there, you touched on some of these things, but dive a bit further into like the importance of the data being clean. Because obviously, if we're going to try to drive it and extrapolate insights from that data or make decisions on it, like the cleanliness of the data is probably the most important thing then.
Yeah, it is. Clearly it is. And it's for two main reasons, not only, but two main reasons are the pricing, because better data ensure that you can have a proper pricing for the insurance, so you pay the proper price for the insurance you need. Because if you have a good data quality, you're going to have a clear view on what are your exposure and what you need to buy to be covered. And the other point being the same that I was mentioning before, so having someone that can understand and approve and be sure that the data are right. Not only the technical team, not only so not only when the data are already transformed, but before. So the source is fine. So I'm sure that the data flow, so the data journey from the source, which is sales, to the outcome, which is their insurance package or whatever it is, it's clear. So this is also very important, not only for the insurance team or whatever deal with insurance, but with everyone in the company. Because every time you find an error in some data, you need to track it back until the source. And if you don't have clear ownership on data, so you don't know who you need to talk to, or you don't have a visibility on this data journey, on the data flow, it's very difficult to find where is the error, because the insurance data are super complex. They go through many transformation from a regulatory perspective, from a business perspective, financial perspective. So it's not like, a very easy P&L.
Yeah.
So it's important also for the other team that has to be involved, being IT teams, operation teams, data teams.
Yeah. And you're talking about sort of rolling out products to clients, and the better the data that you're able to gather, the more trust you're able to build, both with your reinsurance partners, but at the same time, the more trust you're able to deliver down to your end stream clients. How does Generali, or how do you think about that kind of connection between the data quality and then the trust that it sort of helps you build with your partners in the market, whether that's end clients as consumers or reinsurance party clients?
Well, for sure, if you buy the proper insurance setup for what is your business, what are your clients, what is your geographical footprint, it's not just a matter of price, because the price can also be higher. Because if you find, errors in your data and you need to adjust the exposure, and exposure are higher, also the price is going to be higher. Yeah. So it's not always a matter of price. It's not a matter of price, but it's a matter of trust. So you're sure that you're covered. You're sure that your portfolio works very well. You're sure that at the end of the year, more or less, you should be fine. No? Let's say the sustainability of your business, it should be fine. Yeah. So it's a portfolio management topic, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you're right that you have it where it's ensuring that it's almost like an internal trust piece, right? It's not only having the trust where your partners are giving you the fairest price for what your book of business is doing, but that those other business units that we talked about before that are sort of trusting their partners in the other parts of the team, especially reinsurance purchasing, are buying the right amount for the right levels of protection to protect their books and the performance of that book as well, that they're doing a good enough job. And the cleanliness of the data builds internal trust as well as it builds trust to sort of external third parties. I think it's an interesting angle.
Also for the clients, no, because it's not something that the clients see, the insurance, no, in the negotiation, let's say, of the policy, in the first steps of the journey. But at the end of the day, if you have, I don't know, limits on the insurance coverage which are too low or too high for the type of claims that your client is having, you're not giving him a good service. Or for example, if you're only if you have some very peculiar policy, some very bespoke clients, and you don't buy a facultative insurance because, I don't know, you didn't manage very well the data, you didn't understand how this client was fitting with your portfolio and so on, you're not giving a good service. So it's very important to have an understanding on the single policy, the single client, on the single line of business, and on the overall exposure for the company.
Yeah, and that goes back to your comment earlier around the data flow across the chain. Like if it's clear and has good quality from the entrance point all the way through, it allows the decision making along that journey to be made and to be informed, right? You're not kind of going, oh, we should or shouldn't based on like a hunch or like what you've done previously, but the data is backing up the decisions that you're making at each point along the way, whether it's initial pricing all the way through whether you should or shouldn't buy FAC, or what part of the treaty should you put it in. Like all of those things are sort of impacted by the quality of data up front.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, reinsurance is a B2B business. No, the client is not talking directly with the insurance company. It's the insurance company that is doing that. But everything, every, let's say, bad impact on the insurance company is having a bad impact on the client. No, so it's not every, but can happen. So it's very important that the insurance company makes sure that client has backup for everything.
Yeah. As we come in towards the end of the year now, and as you sort of are all probably already looking at the larger objectives of transformation and business change for Generali, how do you think about sort of the 2024 do you have like a roadmap 2020 2030 or something? Like how do you think about like the bigger ambitions of a firm like Generali and what the sort of things you're leaning towards will look like for the next year, 2 years, whatever your sort of roadmap might look like, if we can call it that?
No, that's a discussion that we are having for 25 to 27 because in Generali we do the strategic planning every 3 years. So we are now currently almost in the last year of the previous strategic cycle, of which reinsurance was a big part of the overall reinsurance optimization program I was mentioning at the beginning. I think that the main challenges we need to face are, first of all, this very shaky geopolitical and external market, not external market, but geopolitical and like the climate change, the new type of risk that we are discussing in the insurance space. So it's I think it's a turning point. The last turning point, I think it was COVID for many reasons, not only for business but also from an operational perspective. No, so what do we need to change to keep working in a very different workspace? Now that I think we are more or less all over it, in the sense that we changed the way of working, we changed the way we interact with clients, with partners, we can do everything digitally. It's time for a next step. So now that we are able to do everything in a digital way, how do we really digitalize our world? And especially in a corporate and commercial insurance space, which is very bespoke, because the clients have really specific needs. It's not like in the retail insurance where you can standardize policies and you sell a lot of policy, but with small premiums. in the corporate commercial is the other way around. So you need to be present for the client. You cannot fully digitalize everything.
Yeah.
But still, even if we are not into the digital sales yet, I think we can digitalize everything before. But a lot of automation, robotics, and machine learning things can be embedded in the insurance value chain to optimize time and cost, and dedicate more time to also to develop these new products and to understand how the evolving market, the evolving needs more than the market. Now it's like the needs of the clients are changing, and are changing not only in the not only we have new needs, but also the current needs are different. Like, I don't know, just to mention a very easy one, every type of, the most famous risk in a corporate space, like, I don't know, earthquakes or this kind of stuff, like nat cat events, are different from what they were 10 years ago. So you cannot keep working in the same way. And in order to dedicate more time in developing solution, risk models, and all this kind of stuff, you need to have more time to dedicate to this. So we are trying to optimize the value chain as much as possible. Not only in a reactive way, but also in a proactive way. So we know that the London market is going to move into a digital workspace. There is Blueprint 2, for example, which is now the topic of the moment, and we know we need to do that. So there's no more like maybe in some years we are gonna be digital. No, we know that it's gonna happen. So that's
certainly
gonna be the big challenge.
It's a tricky one because, again, for a global firm, there's times when your strategic agenda is sort of like completely your own, right? It's like, oh, we want to do these things. But there's other times where, as an insurer, like you're either forced by regulatory environment changes and like a shift to SOC 2 compliance and other sort of financial regulation changes previously, or you'll have things like in London, there's been this introduction of Blueprint 2 by Lloyd's and what is required of insurers to operate in this market. And so sometimes you're trying to navigate your own strategic agenda within a macro industry environment of rule changes and other things that are happening along the way, which I'm sure adds an interesting level of complexity to your job, as you don't always control your own fate in that sense. No,
definitely. No, but it's interesting, because it's basically, I think that there was quite a good match between what the market wanted, what the our competitors were doing, and what we wanted to do. Because again, after COVID, everyone was super scared. So it was like, what is going to happen now? How do we manage? What are we going to do? Because not only from an operating model perspective, but also from a claims perspective, was very impactful on every insurance balance sheet and P&L. So from under many point of view, which I'm not gonna deep dive into now, but it was a very, like waiting and reactive moment. So let's see what is happening. Let's understand the situation. It was a very uncertain time. And we reacted to the market challenges. Now I think we are in a better shape to be a little bit more proactive, maybe. So we know what are gonna be the challenges. We know that data again is very important. We know that digitalization is very important. We know that the risks are changing. So we can be proactive in this sense. So I think it's a very good moment. It's the momentum for insurance and insurance companies.
Well, and it's interesting. When you're mentioning about the sort of digital agendas and the different needs that business units might have. Again, I think when you look at sort of startup insurers that are sort of pure tech focused, look like a Lemonade or a Metromile or a Kin or something like this. It's very easy to say, oh, well, we are going to sell a purely digital app or insurance by an app for this particular, insurers or drivers or similar. But for a firm with such a broad scope of offerings like Generali has, like there also has to be this consideration around what you're going to tackle first and the needs of that audience, because there's certainly a number of drivers that you'll have in your portfolio who probably want to be able to take a photo for claims very easily. That's a very different profile than your large commercial clients who could care less about filing their claims on their phone, but they'd rather have someone they can call and have an overview or something, but they're instantly getting things that they care about. And it's more difficult in your role to then sort of look at what does transformation look like for each of those different profiles, because the same solution doesn't fit for everybody, and you have to kind of look at the offering and what your brand means and the service you provide based on those different things, and then begin to build out a bit of a strategy around, all right, we're going to try to do this thing first for this audience, and then focus elsewhere. So I'm sure that's going into, as you strategize, like what are the areas of your business you want to lean into? Like you mentioned reinsurance being part of this last sort of strategic agenda. How are you thinking about prioritizing the consumer products or the commercial lines or the internal pricing model? Like what are the ways you think about across everything Generali does, where are you going to focus your strategic efforts?
We have both for corporate and commercial, because we have our global team in Milano, which gives the guidelines to all the countries, and then we have the country operating in the local market. But also the Generali group overall, but this one is only working with corporate and commercial lines, so it's quite easy. So we have a global guideline strategy, and then we adapt it to the local needs. So that one is not very difficult. When it comes to the Generali group, is a bit more difficult, and of course because we have life, retail, like a small and medium enterprise, corporate. We basically have everything that an insurance company can offer in different sizes, in different countries. But yeah, we cover more or less everything that an insurance company can offer. So it's not my part of my job, that piece, but also at global, like as the group gives us guidelines, and they basically identify what are the market segments that are more profitable, and they also look at diversification of portfolio. Now, for example, if you have only life business and very little non-life business, and we know that non-life business has been more profitable in the last years, the guideline is, okay, let's grow the non-life business. Which business unit in our group are working on the non-life? We have the small and medium enterprises, the retail non-life, the corporate non-life. Okay, which one is more easy to grow? It's more impactful on the financials, is more impactful on the clients, no? Because at the end of the day, we want to be a partner for the client. We're a partner for life. Now it's also our motto. Life partner is the Generali motto. It's been the Generali motto for the last years. So we want to understand how we can serve a client 360 degrees. So yeah, the global strategy is not an easy one because you need to put everything together. But
Yeah. So if we sort of take a step back and we look at, the spectrum of opportunities you have to sort of lean into transformation and change, what is the process that you go through to improve that? Like there's tons of companies that are emerging, managing all manner of insurtech. Insurtech for the last 4 or 5 years has been increasingly big part of the startup space. You also have the opportunity to maybe build solutions in-house. Like that also feels like a daunting and infinite space of ways you could tackle a problem. But if we look at maybe one of those sectors of we're trying to grow into this very profitable part of our business, what is the way you sort of source and plan for and identify or track partners who might support you in those journeys, or whether you should try to build something or do something internally? What does that project look like?
Well, we do have very structured processes to plan what we want to do in terms of transformation and change. So I basically manage, as head of transformation, I manage all the project portfolio pipeline, which means that every three months we identify. At the beginning of the year, we identify what are our priorities for the year according to the 3-year strategy. And then every 3 months we review it, we see if there is something that is changing, if the priorities are changing, if, some very urgent request is coming from the market, from the clients, from the compliance, the regulation, and we allocate capacity, budget, and investment to this. So yeah, it's quite, let's say, a collaborative process. No, it's not up to me to decide what are the priorities. I can prioritize, but it's coming from every part of the business, every part of the company, not only the business. And when it comes to decide if we want to have partnership, to create a partnership or to do that in-house, we basically, first of all, trying to understand what is happening on the market, what our competitors are doing, what are the potential partners that we could contact or start working with, and we also assess if we can build it in-house. And if we have the capabilities and we have the capacity and we think that we can provide the same level of service that a partner can do, we think about building it inside. And of course, we do business cases and everything to look at the trade-off. Yeah. But we really like, in Generali, we really like working in a partnership model. We do that for the most innovative stuff. Like, for example, we have a very solid partnership. Now it's been 5 years, maybe 4 or 5 years. We have a partnership with the Carta Underwriting, which is a parametric MGA. They've been basically the first player, one of the first player in the market developing parametric insurance, and we are a partner. And we've been working together, like our parametric team works together with this MGA to develop the parametric business across the globe. Yeah. We also have other partnership also at central team level, so global partnership, for example, on cyber, or when it's coming to some new thing, some new risk, a new product, I think it's always good to absorb knowledge from the market now, because you can build it in-house, but if there is someone that is really focusing on it, for sure it's gonna know more. And it's good to absorb energies also, not absorbing, it's a negative verb, but to share what is happening, to share the trends, the knowledge, to work together basically. The overall culture of diversity, it's also coming from this. So looking at externally, not only at your internal garden, is always good. Yeah,
and that makes a ton of sense. Do you often have it where there's a bit of resistance or pushback to change? And like if you look at something like the parametric partnership with Descartes is a great example. You had a team that was sort of doing some of that stuff already. Were they excited and open about it? Was there resistance? And maybe we won't point to that team specifically, but on the whole, do you see people are really excited about and embracing change, or do you sort of also wrestle with people who are kind of like, we should just do it this way, we've always done it that way?
Well, it depends. It depends. When it comes to innovation, for like product innovation, people are always very excited. Then are also scared because, of course, if it's a product or a risk is new, you don't have historical data. So for insurance companies, always like, whoa.
It's a stressor.
Yeah,
for sure.
So that's always a bit scary. But when it comes to new products, everyone is always super excited about that. When the innovation is more, let's say, bottom line innovation or more operational, so it's not, you don't have like the cool side of it, it's always a bit more difficult because you need to change the way people are doing things. So you need to force it a little bit at the beginning and find your champions, your supporter in the company, and train the trainers. So you need to convince people by convincing other people that has to convince other people. So it's quite a difficult, it's usually a difficult one, tricky one. But you need to be good in selling what are the benefits of doing something, no?
Yeah, I think that's music to a lot of the sort of startup MGA's ears, to be like, oh, we're doing the cool new thing. And everyone's be buzzing that you're going to have access to a new class of business or something. That's always, writing more business and making more money is always an exciting part of the business. But you're right, when it's like a core systems upgrade or something that's more operational, it's something you're trying to take away the way people have just done their job before. And people have always had, there's always a reticence to change whether it's they want you to use Slack instead of email, or, OneDrive instead of the folder on your desktop. Like all these things, which it's just like, I just do it that way though. And that always feels burdensome, even if there's benefits to them and those teams and the group as a whole.
In the long term.
In the long term, those things feel more painful up front, but
in the short term, it's seen like, I need to use my time to learn a new process, a new tool, a new whatever.
Yeah.
So it's always a little bit challenging. But I mean, it's okay. It's not. It's part of the game. No, I'm used to it, so it's okay.
Yeah. Well, and I think especially with if we go back to those MGAs who are good at giving you like brand new net business, as exciting as that is, you're right. It comes with this reticence or fear or cautiousness around. I mean, whilst they're promising they have all this data that they use to underwrite risk super profitably, like they haven't yet done that. And if we give them our capacity, we might have a great new partner with a great new, ability to grow into a new class of business. But if it doesn't go that well, we might be burning cash and losing a bunch of money on these. Like how does the team come together? Do you have underwriters from different business units sort of coming through to assess that? How does that part work? From your guys' perspective?
You rely on experts basically, so actuarial team, reserving team, underwriting, and you look at what is happening on the market. So what is also the feeling now that your competitors, or I don't know, like also the regulators, because it's also every new product. There is a very little space where a new product is not regulated. So it's very difficult to find something that is not yet been addressed by the regulator, especially in the insurance space. You need to investigate what the other are doing, what is the feeling of the market for that product, and rely on risk modeling, predictive analysis, so your risk team, underwriting, reserving, and so on.
Yeah, I think that's something that I think everyone collectively understands, but doesn't sort of inherently think about as much. But the competition between insurance companies, and you're spot on, where it's if you products become commoditized more quickly than I think insurers would like, but you branch out and create a net new parametric X solution, and all of a sudden you realize the market's like, that is great, and we love this because it gives us the ability to buy this level of cover with the parametric trigger and all these. But it doesn't take very long for the competitors in the market to go, oh yeah, that's cool, and then the next renewal season they've got a similar product or similar or a similar product in the market as well. And there's always this level of difficulty in sort of wanting to branch out new, but knowing you won't have that space to yourself for very long, but you're taking all the risk leaning into a new space. So the insurance industry as a whole has always been really interesting with that. And, like you've said, there's the desire to be sort of a holistic 360-degree partner with big clients, or all your clients, lends itself to going, well, how do we position our offering in its entirety against the other offerings in the market, and then how does innovation and not only just technology, but the other services that we want to provide as well feed our ability to be that sort of central, holistic partner for those clients, which is an interesting strategy. I guess I've not spent enough time thinking about how you look at the peers and your competitors in different markets and how you evolve your offering from there. Is that something that is... You guys are always seen as quite the market leader in most of your geographies. So are you more looking to sort of plant the flag into new places, or is it more of a always keeping in a lens as to what competitors might be doing in similar product classes?
Well, the last strategic cycle was, as I was saying before, after COVID, everyone was a little bit, let's see what is happening. So we've been focusing a lot on strengthening our position in the current geography, but also we'll be looking into some geographical expansion for I'm talking about GC&C, so corporate and commercial. So we have been looking into Asia, we have been looking into Latin America, which are the part of the world where we are not super strong yet. Because in Europe, Generali is quite big. But also we want to strengthen our position in the UK. Well, there is still a lot we can do here. So we are growing at a very good pace. We are in a very strong, solid position. So for us, this strategic cycle was really good because we consolidated our position, our profitable growth. So now it's time for a next step, I was saying. So let's see what we're going to come up with, but it's going to be our task for the next months to come up with a new strategic planning. So maybe in another in another episode we can discuss this. But yeah, no, it depends. It depends from the market momentum.
Yeah.
So when the market was a little bit uncertain, we were looking for consolidating our position and some expansion in some profitable area or very, very, let's say, key strategic area, because Asia, it's not, I mean, you cannot ignore it, no?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we have been doing in the last years, and now let's see.
Yeah, it's super exciting, and I couldn't have picked a better way for us to wrap up this conversation instead of talking about where you're going to go. And yeah, I would love to bring you on again in the future after halfway through the next strategic cycle. We can dive into what you're working on and the focus there. But
I can disclose everything.
Yeah, exactly. Paola, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.